hope everyone's doing well. Again, I just keep saying that I miss you, but it's so true. I know you're having a lot of good times with your family, maybe a couple more books to cuddle up to, movies to enjoy together, and of course those fun board games. So we're going to do the next couple chapters of Flat Stanley. Like I said yesterday, when you're reading a longer book, it's hard because you don't remember what happened. So we're going to open our memory drawer and think, what happened yesterday? Well, it started off, and you can do a picture walk when you do these chapter books. Just go back through them and do the pictures again. And that reminds you, oh yeah, his brother Arthur woke up screaming to his mom that he was squished in the bed. Do you see it there? Oh my goodness. And his mom is super funny. She wasn't all freaking out and worried. In fact, she made them breakfast first. And then they went to the doctor and they said, well, you're feeling okay. It'll be good. And then they realized, hey, it's actually kind of cool. And his brother Arthur was even jealous because he thought, man, I want to be able to do that. And then when she dropped her ring in the grate, Arthur became the hero. Remember that? And he found it. Look, Mom, I got your ring back. Ta-da! Okay, so we're going to be, oh, look at that one. He went to see his friend. Did you guys cut out your Flat Stanley and mail them to anyone yet? That's really fun. A little windy today. So, here we are, chapter 3. Stanley the Kite. Oh my goodness, okay? I'll hold it like this so you can see the words too. Oopsie, my bad. Silly wind. There we go. Mr. Lambchop had always liked to take the boys out with him on Sunday afternoons to a museum or roller skating in the park. But it was difficult when they were crossing the streets or moving about in crowds now that Stanley was flat. Stanley and Arthur would often be jostled from his side, and Mr. Lambchop worried about speeding taxis or that hurrying people might. See that? Look, they rolled him up. Or that hurrying people might accidentally knock him down. It was easier after Stanley got flat. Mr. Lambchop discovered that he could just roll Stanley up without hurting him at all. He would tie a piece of string around Stanley to keep him from unrolling and make a little loop in the string for himself. It was as simple as carrying a parcel, and he could hold on to Arthur with the other hand. Stanley did not mind being carried because he had never liked much to walk. Oh, I messed that up. He never much liked to walk. Arthur did not like to walk either, but he had to. It made him mad. Oh, he's so jealous. Brothers can be funny that way. One Sunday afternoon in the street, they met Ralph Jones, an old college friend of Mr. Lambchop's. Well, George, I see you have bought some wallpaper, Mr. Jones said. Going to decorate your house, I suppose? Wallpaper, said Mr. Lambchop. Oh, no, this is my son Stanley. He undid the string and Stanley unrolled. How do you do? Stanley said. Nice to meet you, young feller, the man said. George, he said to Mr. Lambchop, that boy is flat. Smart, too, Mr. Lambchop said. Stanley is third from the top in his class at school. Phooey, said Arthur. This is my younger son, Arthur. Mr. Lambchop said, and he will apologize for his rudeness. Let's look at this picture. Let's see what's happening there. Oh, what's Arthur doing? He's squishing books on himself. Arthur could only blush and apologize. Mr. Lambchop rolled Stanley up again, and they set out for home. It rained quite hard while they were on the way. Stanley, of course, hardly got wet at all, just around the edges, but Arthur got soaked. Late that night, Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop heard a noise out in the living room. They found Arthur laying on the floor near the bookcase. He had piled a great many volumes of the Encyclopedia Britannica on top of himself. "Put some more on me," Arthur said when he saw them. "Don't just stand there. Help me." Why do you guys think he's doing that? I bet you know, because you're so smart. There you go. No pictures. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop sent him back to bed, but the next morning they spoke to Stanley. Arthur can't help but being a bit jealous, they said. Be nice to him. You're his big brother, after all. The next Sunday, Stanley and Arthur went to the park by themselves. The day was sunny, but windy too, and many older boys were flying beautiful, enormous kites with long tails, made in all the colors of the rainbow. Arthur sighed. Someday, he said, I will have a big kite, and I will win a kite flying contest and be famous like everyone else. Nobody knows who I am these days. Oh, because Stanley's getting all the attention. Stanley remembered what his parents had said. He went to a boy whose kite was broken and borrowed a large spool of string. Hey, you can fly me, Arthur, he said. Come on. He attached the string to himself and gave Arthur the spool to hold. He ran lightly across the grass, sideways to get up speed, and then he turned to meet the breeze. Up, 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 up went Stanley, being a kite. He knew just how to manage on the gusts of wind. He faced full into the wind if he wanted to rise, and let it take him far behind when he wanted to speed. He had only to turn his thin edge to the wind carefully, a little at a time, so that it did not hold him, and then he would slip gracefully down. That would be really cool, wouldn't it? To be a kite. Oh, look at this picture. Whoa, he's so high. That big smile. That's awesome. He went straight up toward the earth again. Arthur let out all the string, and Stanley soared high above the trees. A beautiful sight in his red shirt and blue trousers against the pale blue sky. Everyone in the park stood still to watch. Stanley swooped right and then left in long, matched swoops. He held his arms by his sides and zoomed at the ground like a rocket and curved up again toward the sun. He side-slipped and circled and made figure eights and crosses and a star. Man, he's good. Nobody has ever flown the way Stanley Lambchop flew that day. Probably no one ever will again. After a while, of course, people grew tired of watching, and Arthur got tired of running. Come on, fingers. Uh-oh, look at that picture. Make your prediction. What happened to the kite? So people started emptying. Stanley went right on, though, showing off. 3 boys came up to Arthur and invited him to join them for a hot dog and some soda pop. Arthur left the spool wedged in the fork of a tree. Uh-oh, he ditched his brother. He did not notice, while he was eating the hot dog, that the wind was blowing the string and tangling it about the tree. There's a little bird next to him, too. Can you see that? Look, a bird is sitting next to the trunk going, what are you doing, dude? The string got shorter and shorter, but Stanley did not realize how low he was until leaves brushed his feet. And then it was too late. He got stuck in the branches. That's so funny. 15 minutes passed before Arthur and the other boys heard his cries and climbed up to set him free. Stanley would not speak to his brother that evening and at bedtime, even though Arthur had apologized. He was still cross. Alone with Mr. Lambchop in the living room, Mrs. Lambchop sighed and shook her head. "You're at the office all day, having fun," she said. "You don't realize what I go through with the boys. They're very difficult." "Kids are like that," Mr. Lambchop said. "Phases. Be patient, dear." Oh, we're going to stop there, but check out this next title, The Museum Thieves. You know what thieves are? They're crooks, right? They're bad guys. Alrighty, I hope you enjoyed this chapter. If you haven't had a chance to cut out that cute little flat Stanley picture, go ahead and do that today because it's really a lot of fun. All right, enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Bye.